the story of a boy of 15 years from the United States of America. Many classmates disliked him, and local bullies did not miss the opportunity to bully him in every possible way. The guy himself was very thin, and, as you know, the strong always offend the weak. But that was not all the guy's problems. He had very poor eyesight, because of which he had to wear glasses with large lenses. Most often, classmates ignored him. He attracted their attention only when other guys mocked him. Since the boy was lonely and no one was friends with him, he did not even leave the classroom during breaks, but sat at his desk and reread the material prepared for the lessons, or looked at his phone. Because of the constant bullying of his peers, he was very shy. In addition to the taunts of his classmates, there were other bullies at school who constantly beat him up and did him all sorts of mischief. It was a trio of high school students, and it was because of her that the boy spent all his free time at recess in the classroom. However, this did not always save the poor boy. Often the bullies still found a way to bully him. It seemed that the high school students took great pleasure in all this bullying. On one regular school day, the three caught him in the restroom. Apparently they were bored and decided to have a little fun. The place for bullying weak school children was just perfect, because in such places, teachers do not wander. The victim of this terrible story, they decided to lower the head into the toilet bowl, and, it must be said, they did it not for the first time. Two high school students lifted the poor boy upside down and plunged his head into the toilet tank, while the third was flushing the water. The boy was gasping for air. He was short of breath, and the bullies just choked with their disgusting laughter. At some point, the three hooligans realized that something was wrong. The boy stopped resisting. When they pulled him out and tried to put him back on his feet, he just fell lifelessly to the floor. The boys realized that they had done something irreparable. A breathless body lay before them, eyes glazed with horror and mouth frozen in a last attempt to catch air. There was dead silence. Two of the hooligans stood paralyzed with horror, but the third, the chief of the trio of freaks, quickly rushed to the door and bolted it. When the boys had calmed down a bit, they decided to hide the corpse. None of them wanted to go to jail. The biggest bully realized he had to get rid of the body without attracting attention. So he stole a hacksaw from the janitor's closet, which he used to trim the crowns of the trees around the school. Back in the restroom, they began dismembering the corpse. When the job was done, the hooligans dragged the body parts to the gymnasium, where there was a hiding place behind the wall that only they knew about. The body parts were hidden in the stash, and the hooligans swore to each other that they would never remember the incident again. A month passed. During this time, the school was repeatedly visited by the parents of the missing boy, along with the police. However, no one could find any trace of his whereabouts. But everything changed in an instant. One day, coming to the school and taking their seats, the hooligans found under the covers of the desks decomposing body parts of the one whom they had so unjustly sent to the other world. The school was paralyzed, lessons were not held, and the corridors were packed to the brim with law enforcement officers who arrived on the scene. One of the hooligans under interrogation could not stand it and confessed to what he had done. He described all the details of the murder and showed a cache in the gymnasium where the body parts of the schoolboy they had killed had been decomposing for a month. On the same day, an incredible, scary story about the school spread among the students. Allegedly, the spirit of the boy is still in the educational institution and sometimes materializes in the toilet. The hooligans were arrested and placed in a detention center, where for a long time they were subjected to violence by criminals who beat the school children. Subsequently, the court sentenced them to 15 years in prison. But the gang leader, for his cunning plan to dismember the corpse, received the highest penalty: life imprisonment. Today, the school is still operating as usual. The stash in the gymnasium was bricked up at the request of the murdered boy's parents, and a plaque describing the crime and punishment was placed behind a nearby wall. Since then, however, the guards have been afraid to leave their assigned rooms on the darkest nights because footsteps, moans and screams can be heard throughout the school from the ill-fated toilet where the corpse of the 15-year-old was cut up. The school legend of the school nowadays is that if you go into that toilet, look in the mirror and say, "I know who killed you," you will see the face of the murdered boy behind you for a split second,